It's finally time. It's time to do coilovers on the Miata. We're gonna play with some different coilover setups. We're gonna see if we can get these things dialed in. These things are very adjustable. I'm gonna adjust them wrong. We're gonna do sway bars. We're gonna get a strut brace. We're just doing all the stuff. The weather is finally reasonable for us to actually go into race mode for this season. So we're trying to balance daily driving, autocross capability, and I've gotten pretty into road rally the last few months. If you haven't caught any of that, I'll put a card up here for our most recent rally. It's pretty fun. So we're trying to make a really good all-rounder Miata that's good for daily, autocross, and rally, and it's hard to set up a suspension to do all three of those things very well. The bigger wrench in the plans being autocross. Rally and daily is not a big deal because, you know, these SCCA road rallies take place on public roads that are part of my daily commute anyway. Those kind of align a little bit. But also being good at autocross is, that's a challenge. So to try to suit the various purposes that we're going for, we decided on these Feal 441 coilovers. These are Goodwin Racing-spec. This is their road race model coilover. Particular valving and spring rates that are really good for most track purposes and autocross, which, as we mentioned, means they're probably not very good for rally or daily purposes. So we're actually going to be making some adjustments, but we are going to give them a chance exactly as they are, the way that Goodwin Racing sells them off the shelf. So we're going to install them exactly as they are, just to have a baseline, to verify that they need a little bit of tweaking. We're going to go ahead and get them thrown on and see if we can get them adjusted the way we want them.
If you ever shop for coilovers, you'll know there's dozens of high-quality options on the market for most vehicles, especially an enthusiast car like the Miata. We chose these specifically because they offer a broad range of damping adjustment, just about the lightest weight on the market, and spherical top hats for increased precision at the cost of a bit of vibration and harshness.
Jack stand under there in case the internet notices.
They'll lose their mind.
You know, I've always approached life with a safety third mentality.
Rule number one is to have fun, so safety can't be first.
If you're like us, you pull your suspension apart for fun every few weeks. We've done this a time or two, so the install only takes about 15 minutes per corner. If you'd like to see a detailed walkthrough of this process, check the description for a link to our install video.
You got yours out yet?
No.
I'm not saying it's a race, but it's not a race.
If it were, you started first, so you lose by default.
Out with the OEM Bilstings, and in with these Feal 441s. They're noticeably shorter. Neat.
Take note of that for your ride height.
No idea what the ride height's gonna be. It's part of the adventure.
Let's talk about what ride height we're going for. We need to be as low as possible for autocross, but high enough to be safe for daily purposes on poorly maintained roads. It also needs a little bit of positive rake to not sag when weighed down on rally days with a driver, a navigator, and whatever tools and supplies we bring along, the weight of which is basically all situated over the rear axle. The stock suspension sits at 14.5 front, 14 rear, as measured from the center of the hub to the fender. Most autocross recommendations are in the realm of 13 and 13.25, and we think an ideal height for our purposes would be just a quarter inch higher than that, at 13.25 and 13.5.
So Goodwin sent over their recommendations on how to set these up, and I'm gonna attempt to do that, but I don't know, we'll see how it goes. These things are very adjustable. I'm gonna adjust them wrong.
Goodwin Racing sends vague guidance to supplement Feal's setup instructions, but it's expected that there will be some trial and error in getting these adjusted properly. We wing it by just making sure that the fronts and rears at least match each other in preloaded overall length, and then it's time to slap them in.
You said make sure they're what?
Make sure they're same.
But before we can button up the front, we have to address the strut brace situation.
So this car is one that was optioned with the strut brace from the factory, but right here it's a solid piece. We can't get to the top of the strut, which on the new coilovers, that's where our damper adjustment is. So we're replacing the stock strut brace with this RoadsterSport. This one has cutouts around the top of the struts, so we'll be able to reach our adjustments, and it just looks pretty good. It also somehow is lighter than the stock one, which is mind-boggling because this is pretty thin and flimsy, and that's a beefy boy. So somehow it weighs less as well.
Only record us doing a good job. Don't get a shot of us doing a bad job. We can't show people you know, then they're gonna think we don't know what we're doing.
It's looking like it's gonna be pretty low. Probably lower than we want. We'll see when we get it on the ground.
You gonna get dirt nasty low?
I think needless to say, this is lower than we want it to be.
Alright, let's go ahead and get that other side done.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
You can certainly tell that it's lower. We've been dragging over a bunch of ice and stuff that wouldn't have been a problem before, so the substantial low is already a problem I see for daily purposes. Because we like to just get 6 inches of snow here regularly. It's hard to get any real feel of any handling difference because
You're sliding.
we're on ice.
Oh man, look how deep that is.
It's not bad.
You're gonna have to think about things like that now.
No, because we're raising it back up.
Nah. You're gonna keep it low, right?
This is too low.
It needs to go up.
So last night our quick test drive around the block immediately showed that the rear was just way too low, and we needed to adjust it anyway. And you can adjust it on the car, but it's easier to adjust it off the car. And we're gonna go ahead and swap the springs out, because as we figured, these 10K and 7K springs are just way too stiff. We're gonna go to a 7K and a 5K setup. We've got these Swift springs here that we're just gonna swap out, and that should soften it up and make it appropriate for daily and rally purposes. I'm sure these are awesome for if you're mostly track and decent road oriented, but we got some trash roads around here, and a lot of back roads, a lot of potholes, a lot of dirt roads, so they're just too stiff. We're gonna swap them out for this slightly softer setup, and we'll be using the sway bars to control body roll. So we're gonna see how that goes.
I feel it should be mentioned though, if you are going to be swapping out the coilovers on your ND Miata, make sure you have the right set that you already want, and don't do what we did and keep testing and swapping, because unless you have tiny hands, the ones in the back are very difficult.
Are you having fun with the ones in the back, Alex?
Man,
The rear top hats are a pain to get to.
they're a little tight, You have to close your eyes and imagine that you're doing a good job.
Yeah. So let's get these swapped out and get it all put back together, and then we'll play with getting the ride height adjusted where we want it, because it'll be a little bit different on the new springs too. So yeah.
To put these spring rates into perspective, let's look at the numbers side by side. The coilovers in their off-the-shelf road race configuration came with 10K front and 7K rear springs, which most would consider to be pretty stiff. But it is very reasonable for track purposes. These Swift 7K and 5K springs may not seem a whole lot softer, especially when compared to the stock springs, which equate to roughly 2.7K and 1.4K, but it's enough to make all the difference.
So it's still looking a little bit low. We're gonna go for a test drive, let it settle some, see where it's actually at, and we're probably gonna be making some more adjustments. But it's a better start already. That's part of the fun, right? Isn't this fun?
I love taking them off, putting it back on.
Repeatedly. You can already tell the spring rate's a lot better. Definitely a lot smoother. We just need to adjust the ride height, and this is gonna be good. We'll get it adjusted finally, and then we'll get an actual review on it after all the adjustments are made. Bing bong.
So after a quick ride height adjustment, we were ready to send it testing the car through my 230-mile commute over the weekend. I made sure to test the full range of motion, inspecting for any clunks, clangs, or jangles.
So we've put about 1,500 miles on the car with the new coilovers now, and I couldn't be happier. It handles great, it rides excellent. Like, with the dampers set to full soft, it's basically OEM ride quality. They ride really well, and with them turned up stiff, I think it's going to be really good on the track. And even if it's not the perfect track setup, it's a really good balance like we were going for. I think we nailed the ride height. It looks and feels great, so I'm very happy. So now that we've put some miles on this setup and there's nothing jangly or everything's good, we're good to go ahead and do the sway bars. I didn't want to do everything all at once. In case we ran into any kind of issues, we wouldn't have to track down which thing we had recently done was causing that issue. So just taking it one step at a time. And I'm going to go ahead and sign off on the coilovers as being complete. So we can move on to the sway bars now. Check in with us next time, and we'll see how the sway bars go. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to. No pressure. And otherwise, thanks for checking in with us, and we'll see you next time.
Burnout competition is next week, but that's cool.
Cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and
So we're here at Moe's Performance. People say Miatas don't make power. We're gonna see how much power it's not making right now.